Welcome to the ATA podcast, where we talk to former elite athletes sharing their insights and wisdom derived from successfully transitioning into life beyond the game. A very warm welcome to the Athlete Transition Accelerator. We've got a fabulous guest with us here today, Shea McAleese. Now, this is an epic introduction, Shea, so apologies for embarrassing you, but Shea is a former professional hockey player. He's played at the highest level, over 300 caps for his country, 4 Olympics, 4 Commonwealth Games, a bronze medal, a silver medal, a number of World Cups. He's plied his trade at club level in New Zealand, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Belgium. That's a pretty big opening introduction, Shea. Welcome. We're delighted to have you on board with the podcast with us today. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us.
No, thanks for having me. I can't wait to share some little gems, hopefully.
Good man. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about transition, but just how many years were you playing in the top flight, Shea? Because this is something that the existing athletes that listen to the podcast will naturally be leaning in and be curious about, because we must be knocking on the door of a couple of decades here. How long did you play in the top flight?
Yeah, 17 years.
17 years.
I debuted when I was 20 and then retired at 37. So it's pretty lucky to have a long career, which was pretty special. Like there was a lot of ups and downs along the way, but yeah, it was managed to have a long career compared to, like quite a lot of athletes, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. And is there any, I mean, again, there'll be so many facets to this, but longevity is something everybody aspires to. We talk to so many athletes that would love to go out on their own terms, and unfortunately, in many cases, it doesn't always happen that way. So, when you look back, is there anything that you could put that longevity down to? Is it how you took care of yourself, the discipline there, a little bit of good luck, bit of everything?
Yeah. I'll probably say the number one thing is love for the game. I think like I was like probably from young, like 10 years old, I just loved the game. And I think if you lose the love, you're never going to continue for as long as you do. And I think probably the issue with some athletes is that they can get burnt out of their sport. So what I tried to do as well is that, have hobbies, have little hobby sports that I'll do that just keep me fresh for my own game within hockey.
Yes.
Obviously had some luck along the way in terms of injuries, and, some careers can get derailed by injuries, had a few, but managed to get myself back into it, and then always strive to be better. So that's probably one thing as well. Like, you get to a point where you probably think, I'm at my ceiling, and, that might happen in your late 20s. But I think for me, I really tried to make sure that I wanted to get better every day. And even to the point when I retired at 37 is I was still trying to get better. And that's also trying to keep people out from taking your spot, which I think is really important. And then probably the last one, sorry, no, I'm talking on a little bit here.
No, this is great.
Is I try to, hockey in New Zealand is very amateur. So like no pay. You're a lot of the time it's user pays up until you play for the national side. So you've got to take care of yourself. But a big thing I try to do was become a professional athlete in everything that I did for my sport. So whether that was how I trained, how I ate, did all the things that I could do, like it's a bit cliche, but the 1%ers, the earlier you can do that as an athlete, the more it's going to pay off later on. So like you're doing that between 20 to 26 years old. When you get from 27 to 32 or injuries start to get into play, then you're actually going to be able to carry on with your career. Whereas I find if, people sort of go through that patch where they're just performing in their sport, everything's really natural. And then all of a sudden they hit 28, they haven't really looked after themselves. They then start getting injured, and then their career derails a little bit. So the earlier you can do that stuff, I think it will pay dividends in the long run. That's all you want.
No, I love it. What absolutely, so much to unpack in there, so much wisdom in there. And there's a few things that I'm going to circle back to as we chat. But just over the course of nearly 17 years, as you say, one of the things we always throw in early doors, we're going to talk about transition, we're going to talk about life after the game, obviously, but there are so many highlights I was throwing in your introduction there, 4 Olympics, Commonwealth medals, etc. But what are the highlights to you, Shea? When you look back at that chapter of your life, now that you've, hung up the proverbial boots, what stands out? If you could pick out 1 or 2 memories that really draw forth a sense of pride when you reflect on them now, what comes to mind for you there?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So I get asked this question a lot. So I do quite a lot of public speaking, And probably the one thing that I remember is the moments in the change room before performance and then the moments afterwards. Like it's something to stand beside your teammates and, have that feeling of the unknown when you're about to walk out onto the ground and knowing that you've got 16 other men that are standing beside you thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Just the kind of the nerves. I think it's something until I had children, I've never felt that kind of nerves again. And something that it's hard to sort of replicate. Like it's not the singular performances and stuff that I remember. It's those kind of moments. And then the moments in the change room afterwards where you win or lose and the absolute joy of winning and performance, and then the absolute sort of misery that you go through when you lose. But the beauty of it is that you're doing it collectively and together, so you've got other people to lean on. And I've been lucky enough to play around the world, and a lot of my best mates are from everywhere. So mates in Germany and Belgium and Australia and India and all sorts. And it's just kind of like the people that you meet along the way.
Yes.
Then probably the last one, the performance that stands out the most is actually a negative one. But the reason why I put it in from the negative point of view, it's the performance that I learned the most from. So the Rio Olympic Games, we were playing against Germany. We were up 2-0, and then we ended up losing that game in the last 0.9 of a second, 3-2. So they scored 3 goals late. But it's the performance that I feel I grew the most from. So I was really unsure if I was going to carry on post Rio and have a crack at Tokyo, and that gave me a massive motivation to carry on in my career, and also taught me a lot of learnings around not getting too far ahead of yourself. Like we probably didn't envisage being ahead of Germany 2-0 and then thinking that the game's going to take care of itself. And then all of a sudden we were thinking, we're in the semi, there's 5 minutes to go, we're there. So now I really try to stay as grounded as I can and sort of go off an acronym called WIN, which is what's important now, what's important next, which I try to talk about a lot, about staying grounded and just thinking in the now, staying in the now.
Yeah, yeah. No, so again, it's fascinating listening to you because there's so much coming forth, and there's a theme there as well. So many of the high performers we've had the privilege of talking to reference the camaraderie, the spirit, the being in the dressing room as something that's very, very hard to replicate, and that pre and post match environment comes up a lot. Just going back into and we're going to bounce around here, Shea, so stay with me, just because there's so many themes that are pertinent to existing athletes. Obviously, the work we're doing is multidisciplinary, men, women, around the world, but there's a lot of themes that Carl and I see coming to the fore. And it was actually a fellow countryman of yours in a different discipline, Conrad Smith, who originally brought this point to the fore, something that Carl and I were looking into, that the benefit of being able to step out of your sport, to be able to step out of your sport and just do something different, and the benefit that brings to you from a performance perspective and also a sort of mental well-being perspective. Because I've been there, so many athletes are conditioned that, well, do another session in the gym, do some more skill work, do some more analytics, just stay in your lane on your discipline. And it almost feels a bit like a dereliction of duty to then step out and do something else. And he was one of the first guests that started to talk about it's really important to have that ability to step out. And I want to seize on something you said earlier on when you were talking about longevity. You talked about having hobbies and passions outside of the sport. And I just wonder if you could just elaborate on that and whether you would echo those sort of sentiments, that those hobbies and passions kept that hunger and that love of the game alive that you had, and whether that had that sort of direct correlation to performance for you as well.
Yeah, 100%. So like when you're a high performance athlete, everything is based around pressure. And the beauty of getting away from your sport and like doing another sport or whatever that might be, it's doing it for fun. And there's without the pressure. Like, don't get me wrong, I still had fun and still loved my sport, but the biggest importance was to do it without the pressure. That's why I love doing something different. And also, like, actually you can learn a bit out of doing other sports. So like I played a bit of squash and actually got better at hitting balls as a hockey player, literally because squash has a lot of parallels to it. Or like I'm a coach now with the New Zealand men's side, and we've been doing some one-on-one reviews of the season just been, and we've actually been telling athletes to jump into other sports because they're struggling to learn some similar concepts around how to defend or how to get away from players. And We were talking to a striker yesterday and said, "Hey, look, we think it'd be awesome for you to play 3-on-3 basketball. Just
Right.
one, do it for fun, but you're actually going to learn a lot around how to muscle up against players and how to get around them, and just a different sort of mode, but also actually enjoy it. Obviously, there's got to be the caveat that doing it without trying to get injured, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
actually doing something that is different from your sport, because I've found that." Athletes that try and do too much of their sport and they just burn out. So having that still doing something different is good. And there doesn't have to be another sport as well, right? So my wife was a high performance athlete. She didn't want to do another sport, but she would find other avenues to get away, and whether that just be going for a walk or she loved to spend a lot of time at the beach or read and things like that. So just doing things to get you away from the pressured environment and doing something that will ground you back to being who you need to be.
And it's just lovely to hear, because it echoes when you've been at the very highest echelon for so long, and all of that high performance sort of necessity that you're talking about, but then you can say, no, there was a value to being able to step away. So the profile of who's listening to the show, Shea, it's very diverse, but there are a lot of young athletes who are just starting out on the journey. We've all been there. That desire to, that indestructibility. That's not me. It won't matter to me. I've got all these years ahead of me. So it's nice to hear you reflecting that wisdom back. Now, one of the things you just mentioned in passing there was that you're coaching now at an elite level. But can you just sort of wind the clock back for us? What prompted the retirement? Was it on your terms? And then give us a little bit of an overview of how your transition timeline has evolved. Because again, much like the introduction, if I try to pick out everything that came up in our research, you've set up businesses, you're still involved in coaching, you've been in education, you're doing public speaking, there's ambassadorial roles with the Olympics, you've also been involved at club level coaching. So there's a lot there going on. So when did the planning start? When did you decide to retire? And give us a bit of an overview of what you've done since stepping out of that hockey environment.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because there's a lot of people that you talk to that will say this in two different ways, and I kind of sit a little bit on the fence with this one. So sport is your plan A, and then everyone talks about what's plan B. So plan B is if plan A obviously doesn't work out. But if you've ever listened to Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, elite athletes and stuff, they say no plan B.
Yeah, burn the boats.
If you're all in, you're all in.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a little bit different, because they're probably earning to a capacity where, if they're playing, then plan B doesn't need to take part. But I definitely was an athlete that was all in until I was about 28. So the London Olympics, I was only considering plan A. And then I got to a point where I was pretty comfortable with, although comfortable can be a bad word to use in high performance sport, but got to a point where I was pretty comfortable in my standing within the side, and felt that doing something outside of sport, starting to think for life afterwards when it was going to finish, because the plan at that stage was to only go to Rio. Okay. So I really needed to actually start to, think about what sport was going to be like for me afterwards. And if I waited till after Rio, I would have been 32, and things might have been a little bit tricky to just start from zero, right? So I was lucky enough that in New Zealand sport, we have a high performance sport grant called the Prime Minister's Scholarship. So they were able to fund me to study the whole way through. So I studied, almost for 15 years, coinciding with my sport, which was really good to get something out of that. And then as I was still playing, when I finished playing in Europe in 2019, I was actually director of sport at a college, and they were really supportive of me taking time away to still reach my goal of going to Tokyo. So trying to find, if you are in that position, trying to find a work or something that will support you is really important, because the more they support you, the more they buy into what you're trying to achieve. So I think that's really important from transition. But I am a definite advocate for give plan A all you've got, because there's only one crack at it. And then when you're getting to a point where whether, it's going to fall off one way or the other, it's going to get to a point where you're comfortable or it's going to fall off, that's when you maybe start to bring plan B into place. But you're always going to probably do something like I was always studying, as I mentioned, but that was more to keep the brain active, because if I was only literally doing hockey, I think I would have burnt out earlier anyway. And then really lucky to be able to go all the way to Tokyo And I was still a director of sport at a college. I'd started a little mini business called Inside Hockey, which is growing its own leagues now and doing really well at the moment. So they were sort of all sort of side projects. And then I'd always been coaching along the way, just because I loved giving back to athletes and seeing what that was going to be like. And then it wasn't until 2022 that a assistant coach's role came up with the New Zealand women's side, and I was like, oh, I'll have a little crack at this, and had a crack and ended up getting the role, which was only about 6 months after I retired. So that's been the last 4 years. I've been a high performance coach now, and was lucky enough to go with the men's side to Paris. So
Fabulous.
I think, yeah, like probably the biggest thing I would say is just making sure that you're at least dipping your hands into things that make you passionate outside of your sport. And even if that's coaching within your sport, because you never know when opportunities do come up, but when they do come up and when you're ready, if you have been dipping your hands into it, the likelihood of it coming to fruition is going to be higher.
Yes.
Whereas if you just left it dead and cold, then maybe it's not going to happen. But I definitely didn't start that trajectory until I was 28, because I definitely wanted to make sure I gave all I could to my sport first and foremost.
Yeah, and that's the legitimate challenge that we hear a lot, Shea. Well, hang on, what if am I? And that's where unpacking it's nuanced. That yes, that's the priority, but we were talking earlier today with a former Olympic rower, and he was quite ruthless that you've got more time than you think. And when you step out of your sport bubble, you'll realize, and particularly if you have kids and all these things that can come along down the timeline, you've got time to, as you say, to experiment, to study, to be doing something, to be stimulating the interest. So it is a fine line between I'm all in, as you say, and not leaving yourself too exposed if injury or something strikes and you're starting from scratch. And just on that note, just out of interest, because you talked about studying for quite a lengthy period there, was there anything in particular that you were pursuing, or were you doing multiple different sort of courses and things? Did you already have an idea of where you wanted to go, or
No.
was it a case of experimentation?
Yeah, no idea, to be fair. Like it's a classic, like when you finish high school, everyone says that you've got to go to university, and
Yeah.
ended up doing religion and history, and I have no idea why I chose that, but it was
Yeah.
basically go to university. But I fell out of that pretty quickly. And I think that's probably one of the things as an athlete I would say recommend, is that if you're doing something you don't enjoy it, then just move on, change direction. So too many times I see athletes or people, and they get into something and they don't enjoy it, and then they just stay in it. I'm like, yeah, if you don't enjoy it, just push yourself to do something different. And it's
Absolutely.
the same with work, right? Don't do something that's going to make you unhappy, because then life is just unhappy, because work and study takes up a big proportion of what you're trying to do. But then, yeah, changed tax and went into sports business management, which has been really good. So I've got a master's in that, which has really helped me create my own Inside Hockey business. It's me and one other. We've got a digital coaching platform. We've got a digital animation drill builder platform. We've got a retail store. We've got 250,000 followers on social media globally. So it's something that's grown just purely based off that. And then I've got another master's, as I mentioned, I studied for a while, which is in sports science. So that one was really cool, just to be able to learn a lot about my body as I was training and as I was playing. And, you get a lot of support from physiologists and strength and conditioning coaches and stuff as you're an athlete, but I was actually able to understand exactly what they were talking about, and basically be able to train on my own, because I had the knowledge of how to do it and what I needed to do to get back to being at my best if I was ever injured or things. So I really enjoyed that side of it as well. And it's related well to my now coaching role. So I can wear many hats with my coaching side.
And many hats indeed that you're wearing. And this is why it's lovely to hear you sort of articulating all of this, because it's easy just to skim over what you're saying. It's all coming out, flowing out perfectly. But multiple different elements of study. Going back to your earlier point, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't resonate, life's too short, step out. This is another theme that we hear continually from athletes that have walked this path, that, there's very rarely do you get that magic bean, that silver bullet that just you step out and it's a perfect fit. It's absolutely fine to try something, whether that's a training program, whether it's an actual practical role, and keep exploring until you find what fits. And the other thing that's interesting is that entrepreneurial, which is to your credit, that came up on our research. It's a great platform that you've built, combining your knowledge, your passion, but actually building a business as well. So A lot of athletes talk to us about having this entrepreneurial drive, but again, it's like, oh, well, I can't do it. It's an either or. I'm either all in on my sport, or I'm all in on my business. But presumably that's something you've just steadily built. And was it something you'd started, or was the idea there when you were playing, or does this all come to life post-retirement?
No. So it started in 2015. So I
Right.
was playing in Belgium and I was playing with another guy called Ronnie Brouwer, who was a silver medalist with the Dutch national side. And we like both passionate about hockey, both passionate about giving back to the sport, and then started just creating little mini videos. It was kind of like probably it's 10 years ago now, before the real social media boom, I would
Yes.
say. And, it literally just skyrocketed from there, and it became a social media page, non-earning, and then from the social media side of it, we've just built it from there. I would definitely say if you want to go down an entrepreneurial journey, for anyone that's listening, is you have to love it, because if you don't love it, you won't do it.
Yeah.
If you don't love it, when things get tough, you'll drop it. But if you do love it and you do invest time in it, then it's something that you'll be a bit more passionate about to keep going. But
Yes.
obviously, the thing is, you've got to, what is a need? What is a need in the market, or what is a need for people? Because if you're going to do something that's just a regurgitation of everyone else, it's going to be hard to probably get it to grow legs. Whereas we were probably the close to almost the first hockey page that was created. So we've got a really good standing and built a premise around what we do. So now everything that we then build in behind it is it's already got legs to stand on. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a fine line, but definitely one to explore alongside your playing career. You know, like if you're a semi-professional, or you're getting paid or not, but you're investing your full time to hockey, you're going to have your sport, you're going to have downtime in the day to do something. So
Yeah. Yeah.
open your mind and have a crack at something and see what sticks for you. And probably the biggest thing, it's a little bit counter to what I said, is that if you don't like it, don't do it. But you've got to go to a point in time where it becomes something that you don't like. So
Yeah.
like coaching athletes at the moment, they don't stick with things for long. So it might
Yes.
be like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they drop it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they drop it, because the youth of today, everything's fast moving
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
just like it just comes and goes. But I would say when you start something, give it a set period of time. What that time is up to you as a person. But like if it's got to a point in time, so it might be 2 months or it might be 6 months, if it's got to the end of time, you don't enjoy it or you don't feel like it's going to grow, then pivot and change.
Yeah.
But if you're going to regurgitate that every 2 to 3 weeks, you'll run out of things to do. But it will also mean you don't have that stickability, which you
Yeah.
also need.
And I think it's really important. I think without sounding like an old man, it's a societal shift, isn't it, in terms of the desire for instant gratification, how we communicate, social media sort of accelerated that. I think
Yeah.
one of the things I'd add, and everything you said there is absolutely valid, is get some external perspective and what is a reasonable amount of time to give something to see a breakthrough. There's not many entrepreneurs in the world that would say within a month or two my business exploded. Most entrepreneurs will talk about the highs, the lows, the setbacks, and that eventually those breakthroughs come, but it takes time. So I think that perspective is important. You might have struck upon a fabulous idea, as you and your business partner evidently did, but it didn't explode overnight. It was something that you invested in, and over time it builds. So I think it's just another powerful message that, and it is this fine line, because some people might say, well, listening to this, are you saying go all in or don't look at anything else? Or are you saying explore, experiment, study? And I think it's the hybrid fit for you. But I like the fact that your journey's been very diverse. You've explored education, you've started a business, you've stuck with it and built that. But a word that comes through a lot is passion and enjoying things. It drove your longevity in your sport. You like to give back. You're still involved in the coaching side. Your entrepreneurial journey is linked back into your passion. So I think you are a classic sort of walking example, a positive case study of when you're passionate about things, results will come. You've just got to give it time. And
Yeah.
one of the things
So
that probably flows really well for you, Shea, I know in amongst all of this, you do your speaking, you're also involved in coaching. And so you're probably doing this day in, day out. But transferable skills is something that comes up a lot with existing athletes. Some people are very aware of what they have and how that will help them in the future. Some people have a high level of clarity about what they want to do, and therefore it's even easier to start aligning skill sets and traits for that next chapter. But equally, we speak to a lot of athletes that are quite down on themselves, that they're a little bit dismissive of where they are as an elite athlete, and they're sort of blind almost to what they can carry forward into industry. So having been at the top flight for so long, having stepped out, built your own business, involved in the coaching and high performance work there, and all the associated things you've done post-retirement, could you just shine a bit of a spotlight on one or two of the core areas that you say, well, my hockey's really helped me in this next chapter. These are some of the skills that I have brought forth into the next wave, the next chapter of my career?
Yeah. I'll sort of go forward, because I think it's really important for the listeners to understand that as much as I'm like talking and giving advice around, plan A's and plan B's and all that kind of stuff, if you agree with it or not, I don't care. I know that sounds harsh, but the thing with that is it was my journey.
Yes.
So I want to tell everyone on here, regardless of what you do, it's your journey. There's no right or wrong. You've just got to follow a path and then decide if it's right for you at that time or if it's wrong for you at that time, and then go from there. So that's probably something I just really want to sell to people listening, is that just follow you, be
Yes.
you, be the version of yourself, and then you'll thrive in whichever way you want to go. So that's probably the most important aspect, because regardless, I've listened to thousands of podcasts and stuff, and sometimes you agree or sometimes you don't. But at
Absolutely.
the end of the day, that's their perspective, right? So
yeah.
That's probably the big rock here. Then for athletes and transferable skills, like I've been well across this now for a little while, is that everyone loves hiring athletes, and one, they love hiring athletes when you are an athlete because they can sell you as a person. They've got an international rower or an international cricket player or whatever it might be, and then they can actually pin that person up within their sporting within their business body, and actually share that we've got this amazing athlete that's part of our community and we're supporting them to do that. So finding a business that will do that for you in the first place is really important. So don't undersell that fact that they want you as part of their business. The second part that I would say is that athletes have more perseverance than normal people. So the number one thing is that I've always kind of like gone through this process, is that when I say, hey, can you do this? An athlete will just go and do it. And then if they don't know, they'll ask, because they also want to make sure that they can do it right and do it the first time. And then for normal people, they'll kind of just they'll shy away from it a little bit. They'll try and maybe go and scratch around. Whereas I've always also found that athletes are really fast workers. So they go, okay, well, I've got something to finish, I'm going to finish it. They don't sort of go through the motions. And probably, like, my wife's in HR, so she has to deal with this a lot, but just the resilience piece that athletes can bring, that sport brings out the highest highs and the lowest lows, more than what a working world can do. So you're actually getting critical feedback. So critical feedback or radical candor, or however you want to say it. So as me to a coach, do you want me to be direct? Do you want me to show care, or how do you want it for today? And a player might say, I want you to give me care for today, or they say, I actually need it straight between the eyes, and then you actually can give it straight between the eyes. So they're actually really good at receiving feedback. And then when they get that feedback, it's not like you're hitting me personally. You're actually trying to make me better at what I'm doing, because that's the art of coaching, and that's the art of being an athlete and receiving, because it's going to make you better. So your trajectory is really high.
Yeah.
Compared to, work with people that aren't athletes, and then you tell them some direct feedback, and then they think it's a personal attack. And it's like, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about what you're trying to do. So there's a real distinct difference, and that's the number one thing I think athletes are really good at doing, and it's why people love to employ athletes. And I've almost, in my entire life so far, I've almost never heard of an athlete being a poor appointment, because they've been very good at what they do.
No, I think, again, well said, Shea. I mean, it's so well articulated, and I wear multiple hats and step into business a lot and endorse everything that you say. And particularly, it's getting worse. I think society is shifting, and we're getting more and more defensive about feedback, and that is holding so many organizations back, because they're not able to create that environment where you can give and take feedback to improve performance without taking it personal. And your wife, no doubt, will see that if she's in HR. So I'm really pleased you picked up on that, because I echo what you say about people recruiting athletes. And yes, it's wonderful when businesses step forward and sponsor and support them through their professional chapter as well. But we work with a lot of businesses now and help place athletes in there, and they are always happy with the ripple effect. It's not just about what the individual brings, it's that ripple effect, because they start to set a new standard, they start to influence that ability to give and take feedback, that perseverance, that proactivity. It has a positive impact on everybody that they interact with. So I think, just echoing everything you've said, if you are still competing, we always say within our organisation, Shea, we're not accelerating you to the end of your sporting chapter, far from it, but we're trying to remove some of the fear of transition. So when that comes about, you've got more confidence. And again, everything you've said, hopefully that really resonates, that you've already got traits, you've already got skills, the perseverance, that commitment to improvement, that desire that you said right at the start to keep getting better, even at 37, having done nearly 17 years in your sport. That trait carried over into business is invaluable. And you're used to riding the lows and punching through the lows and experiencing the highs, but giving and taking feedback all the time. So that's probably true of pretty much every sporting discipline and every individual listening. And that's
100%.
already in your locker that you can carry forward, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like, we have a saying in our team: if I'm not talking to you through feedback, I don't care about you. So we try to have an open, honest, caring relationship, and that is with critical feedback that quite often happens. We have a little process called a TAP, so Team Accountability Partner. It will change for every tour. So it might be you and I we're taps, and we're going to turn the water on for this one, and we're going to then give you feedback.
Right.
You've got to tell me how much water do you want me to turn on before we actually start, but then the feedback will flow. And then the more that players can get used to giving it to each other, it means that it opens it up when it becomes to a bigger group, and then they're also used to it when it comes from the coach to player.
Yeah.
And the more that you can do that, the more that you can receive it, the more that you can bring it into your day-to-day life. Me and my wife, we still try and do it to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because it helps us grow. It just means that when you do get it, like if I have a comment from a CEO, I'm not taking it as she's like, attacking me. I'm just going, oh, she wants me to be better in what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, yeah, cool, awesome. Let me do that.
Exactly. And being able to take it is so important, because again, pivoted into industry, we see a lot of leaders that say the right things. They want that candid feedback. They want it in their team. They encourage it. But then when it comes back to them as the leader, they can get a bit defensive. So again, those ex-athletes are used to be giving it to each other, being able to talk candidly to coaches, receive it, give, and it's just that. It is a competitive advantage. And as you say, it transcends all aspects of your life. If you're blessed to have children, you're going to need to have those candid conversations. If you're blessed to have a partner, you end up getting married, then you need that candor. Otherwise, you don't move forward. You're sort of lurking in the ambiguity and the uncertainty. So, there's so much that you've already shared, and this may be a risk of repetition, Shea, but nonetheless, it's a popular question that people like, because it pulls a couple of things to the surface of your thought process. So we're encouraged to speak to our guests and say a do and a don't. You've had a wonderful story of transition already, and there's so many things you're involved in. But part of the podcast Raison d'Etre is accessing the wisdom of hindsight. So when you look back at coming out of sport and the transition you've gone through, is there one thing that stands out as a do that you would say to the listeners, hey, do this because it will really improve your ability to transition? And equally, is there something now when you look back and go, do you know, I want to share this as a don't do this because it will hinder your transition? And that may mean you bring to the fore something you've already said. Absolutely fine, Shea. But what comes to mind when I position that question to you?
Yeah, it's a good one. Like, it's a simple question, but it's quite tricky, I think. I think if I was gonna say a do, I would probably say do invest your time in your plan A only. I am an advocate for that. Do understand where the transition point is in your lifespan of your sport around where plan B needs to come to fruition. So I would say that kind of answers the don't aspect as well, is that if you go, I'm going to be an athlete and then I'm going to work here, and you go 50-50, I think one's going to fall over and you're not going to be good at one or the other because you're not investing enough time into it. So I would say, like for me, I was going 90% into my sport and had 10% of study that just kind of went through here. So I was giving all that I could to be an athlete, but then I was really clear in my understanding of where that transition point was. So I got to a point where I said, okay, London Olympics, I'm 28 years old. This needs to then go from 90-10 and it needs to actually get to maybe 60-40. And then that, coming out the other side of Tokyo, then obviously then this went and flipped the other way. So it's really, really important, I think, to have that, the clarity around what that looks like. And again, this was for me, but I think it's important for people just to at least explore what that could be.
Yes.
So you might have a 22-year-old listener on here and they're going, oh, but if I don't have a plan B, things are going to get, if I get injured, you're planning for something that you don't know that's happened yet. So what you need to do is then go, okay, well, I really want to be an athlete, or do you not? If you don't really want to be the athlete or really want to go to Olympics, then you've got to go, okay, well, maybe I'm actually going to invest more time here. So you've actually got to have that really clear conversation with yourself, and probably something that I wish I started a little bit earlier, which I only started probably in the last 3 years of my career, and is now in my coaching career. I have 5 mentors. Right. So mentorships, and you mentioned it a little bit ago around gaining perspective of others. I think it's really important. It's important to not obviously your partners and stuff are really important to gain perspective, but they're always going to give you the softer sort of view to things, and be really careful around going, I'm just going to ask this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, because it can cloud information. Whereas if you're really clear around, okay, I need this style of feedback, go to and get that kind of mentor. I need this style of feedback, I need this kind of mentor. So then you're really clear around who you're going to go to. Yeah. So I have a coaching mentor, which is specifically about me as a hockey coach. I have a culture coach. I have a 20-year-old mentor. So people would say, why do you have that? And I said, well, because you're Gen Z and I've got no idea how to deal with you. So I have one of you as well. I have an entrepreneurial mentor. And then I have a radical candor kind of feedback one as well. So I've got different elements to my life where I can then grab onto other people, and they do that all for free. And then because they do it for free, because I then mentor myself out to others as well to support them. So it sort of helps you with that clarity. So when I was looking to transition out of my sport, I would go, okay, well, what do you think? What would be a really good moment for me to do this? Or what do you think I need to do to then fulfill this area of my life? And obviously my wife would give me a really nice perspective of it, but they would be really critical and go, okay, well, this is actually, you need to do this, or you're not doing this enough, and this is where you need to go. So having those kind of clarity mentors early in your career, I think is a real positive move forward. Not sure if I answered.
No, really you answered brilliant, and you've given a really different perspective, which has got my mind racing. I hear what you're saying. It's challenging my thinking, but in a good way, because we're very much about protecting athletes from that downside, and we've had some horrendous stories in the UK, particularly in rugby in recent years, with 3 or 4 clubs disappearing and people being left exposed. But I like the way you've sort of challenged yourself to say, what's the natural sort of transition point? And that takes a high level of self-awareness. I just want to go back to that, because you talked about, well, I'm all in till sort of 27, 28. Was that driven based on what you felt for you? Or were you looking around and saying, where do people start to step off that international top flight level? Where do people start to break down with injury? Because it makes perfect sense what you've said, and how that 90-10 then shifted more 60-40 post that point. But just curious how you sort of landed at that space. What drove you into that number of sort of 27, 28-year-old?
Yeah, so it is actually an easier answer than you probably think. I kind of early on in my career, my dad was a reasonable sportsman himself, but kind of said through my 20s is for my sport, and through my 30s is for myself. And for myself, that's work, family, obviously, hopefully wife, children, etc., which I'm lucky to have. But that's kind of the natural transition. And then with Olympic cycles, you go 4 years, right? So then I finished London at 2028, and then I was like, oh shit, I'm going to be come Rio, I'm going to be 32. I really need to actually start thinking about what does life look for after hockey? Because I
Yeah.
kind of always said to myself, I'm going to retire at 32. It was purely based on unfinished business, which kicked me on to 37. But that was kind of the natural transition for me. And I felt that giving it that time through my 20s meant that I was really prepared when it came to it to then invest time in the other side of my life through into my 30s. And I think
Yeah.
having that clarity had really helped me to go, I'm all in now. And it actually improved my hockey. I actually got better with my hockey because I had a real, I wasn't now just all in. I had really nice life balance. But if I didn't do that all in at the start, I wouldn't have got myself to a point where my hockey grew, me as a person grew. They say you're actually not fully grown or your mind's not fully developed until you're 28. So kind of got to a point where I was actually really now comfortable with going, well, I can actually invest time in study. I can actually invest more study. I can invest time in entrepreneurial journey or working, and
Yes.
it's actually going to make me a better hockey player.
Yeah. Yeah.
It actually did, because I just had this amazing life balance. And when you start getting a little bit older, you then thinking about, partner and children and
Yeah.
all that. When I got married and had children, I again started playing better because I had all this other purpose in life, and hockey became this massive joy.
Yeah, exactly. And back to that perspective, it's important, but it's never the be all and end all. So no, that makes perfect sense how you got to that number. And I just want to just sort of dovetail in with what you said about mentors. I think it's to your absolute credit that you've got such a diverse range, and I love that fact that you're willing to sort of get a 20-year-old as well. Because why? Well, it gives you value. And so I think going back to your earlier point about everybody's on their own journey, there is no one size fits all. But as a theme, the benefit of mentors is unquestionable. And you talked about partners. I always say that you need that emotional support. And anybody who's blessed to have a husband or a wife and have that really strong bond, it's a phenomenal emotional support. But you also need that no nonsense direct feedback. And one of the places that I always advocate is go and find people that have walked the path that you want to walk along. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship, go and speak to some entrepreneurs and understand their journey. If your aspiration might be to get into coaching, well, go and look for somebody that's stepped into that coaching arena. You'd be a wonderful guy to talk to if somebody said, "Well, I'm thinking about coaching." You've been in schools, you've been in clubs environments, now you're in an Olympic environment. So look for the people that have actually walked down the path, because a lot of us are too nervous to actually make the request. And as you said, you're doing very kind work for free with people. Some people are doing some work for free with you. When you actually appeal to somebody and are respectful and say, "I admire what you've done. Could I ask you a couple of questions and seek your advice?" Very rarely will people say no. So I think that just builds into what you've done so effectively. Mentors can come from anywhere, but particularly look for people who have excelled in an area where you want to be.
Yeah, where you want to be, or where you have a gap, is the
Yes.
other point I would say. Say if you're lacking in self-belief or confidence, go and search for a mentor that is really strong in that area, because I guarantee when they talk to you, you're going to grow from that conversation, right? And the more they do it, the more you grow. So
Yes.
definitely, like a lot of the people, like I started with my mentorship was to follow their path and to learn from them as much as I could, but I also try to search for gaps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where do I need to actually learn? Where do I need to grow? And then they'll support me with that. So the tricky part with everyone is starting, like picking up the phone and giving and actually calling someone or saying, "Hey, can we meet for a coffee?" Because it's too easy to send them a DM or send them a message, but actually like do something a little bit different and actually go, "Hey, look, can I take you for a coffee? I'd love to talk about you supporting me in my journey as an athlete, and maybe you could mentor me." Like even just asking that,
Yes.
you'd be surprised at how much you empower the person that you've asked.
Yeah.
The fact that you just simply ask them, that you find that they would be someone that would really support you and help you, that I guarantee they'll get just as much of a kick out of it as you will.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I apologize for some people that might have listened to the back catalogue and certain things come up, but somebody might be landing on this for the first time. I think it's really important to make that bridge. It's a valid point that you state, because athletes are used to working on the weaknesses. They're used to being able to watch film, analyze performance, identify where there's a gap, and go and spend time with the relevant coach. It may be skill development. It may be something to do with their S&C and working on an aspect of their conditioning. It may be something around nutrition. They're used to saying, where's the gap? How do I address it? So don't lose that open-minded sort of willingness to work on gaps when you step out of sport. It's equally as prevalent, but a lot of people tend to shy away. Well, I don't want them to know I've got a gap there. Well, you didn't do that when you're an elite athlete. You'd go and do the work.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
So just again, it's been a wonderful conversation, Shea. Couple of quick fire questions. Again, these are things you will have been asked before. Someone with your career, I know you will. But that being said, they come out of the community and people really like this, and there's been some great answers, and it stimulates discussion. So no particular order, but best piece of advice you've ever been given that you would share with the listeners of this podcast. It might be life advice, it might be to do with your sport, it could be anything. But if there's a piece of advice that you'd say, that always struck a chord with me, I'd share that.
Give everything a go once.
Like it. Applies to everything, doesn't it? Life, sport, everything. Yep. Yeah, love it. Quick fire number 2. A book that you would recommend, something that's had an impact on you. Again, could be anything.
This one's a cracker. Unstoppable by Gilbert Enoka.
Is he the skills guy with the All Blacks rugby?
Yeah. So he was All Blacks. He's worked with New South Wales Blues. He's been Chelsea football, Black Caps cricket. It's a great. It's only just recently out, but it's a audio book as well on Spotify. But it's very good.
Yeah, I think that's on my Christmas letter. I heard my daughter mumbling something with my wife. So if it's only just come out and it's linked into the All, but that could be one. So I'm looking forward to reading. That's a great one. Another one that comes out again. Forgive me for being a bit cliched, but they always prompt some interesting answers. So it's the classic dinner, 3 guests, dinner and a couple of drinks. Who would you like to invite to have a memorable evening? Who would be on your guest list?
Michael Jordan, number 1. That's purely based on when I was a kid, as a 5-year-old. He was the pin-up one that I was like, oh, I'd love to be a superstar athlete someday. Yeah. Lisa Carrington, she's the GOAT of New Zealand sport. So won, I think it's 8 gold medals and a bronze in New Zealand sport, which is pretty phenomenal. Yeah. And I'm going to stick to New Zealand, and then obviously it's Richie McCaw. So purely based on a phenomenal long career, probably the grittiest athlete that I've ever seen play sport. Never gave up, never gave in type of attitude. So I know I've gone pretty Kiwi, but I think it's
it's all phenomenal athletes. Michael Jordan's popped up a lot, actually. I've got a mental block, but somebody had Michael Jordan, Shane Warne, and Mike Tyson recently, which I thought that was a pretty good guest list. Pretty good, because their premise was, listen, I want a good evening, I want good stories, and I think I'm going to get a lot of stories out of those. So so great answer. Last thing from me really is just, who would be a good guest from your network? One of the things that we found really powerful is referrals, and people saying, hey, this individual don't have to be a household name, far from it, but they've got an interesting story of how they've transitioned out of sport into that next chapter. Is there anybody that comes to mind, Shea, that you like?
There's a couple. So I'm really good friends with Moritz Förster. So we're actually going to compete in the doubles Hyrox in Melbourne this weekend, but he's the co-owner of Hyrox. So I played 3 years with him in Germany. He's a double gold medalist, Olympic hockey player. Obviously you surely know Hyrox, but it's absolutely boomed.
It certainly has. And I didn't know that's an education for me, that he's one of the founders of that. So he would be a great guy to talk to.
He's the co-owner. And then the other one would be Hugo Ingles. So Hugo Ingles played a lot of hockey with him. He's the co-owner of High Impact Athletes. I'm not sure if you've heard of High Impact Athletes.
No, but check it out.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. They basically, any athlete across the world can give a portion of their winnings or of their salary towards supporting charity. So they're doing an amazing work. And Hugo and Mo were both at my wedding in Vegas. So then got to meet each other. And now Hugo has Race for Impact. So me and my wife were going to compete in February at the Hyrox Auckland, and you can actually purchase a Race for Impact ticket, which then only gets released if you raise a certain amount of money. And then all that money that's raised then goes to charity work. So I reckon they're one of the big pioneers of the charitable industry at the moment.
Love it. It certainly piqued my interest with both of those. What phenomenal recommendations, Shea. Well, listen, all that remains to be said really is a huge thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I'm sure people will be intrigued to learn a little bit more about you. If people wanted to reach out, connect with you, Shea, where's the best place to find you? Where would you direct them?
Yeah, happy for you to share email, happy for them to reach out, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn,
So
yeah.
obviously always good, or Instagram, either one really.
Perfect.
Not stress, but again, I'll just reiterate, like every journey is your own journey. It's always good to listen to these types of things, and if you get one piece of information, it's a worthwhile 50 minutes to listen to.
Yeah.
If you agree, then that's when the gold really happens. But people can again disagree or agree, but it's you need to find the journey yourself, and that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned and try to direct athletes with now is that I can't tell you what to do. I can just support you to what to do, and then you need to choose how you're going to do it. So,
yeah, well said. And I think going back in the day, pre-podcast, that's how books were always introduced to me. Read around people, learn. Certain authors will resonate more than others. Might just be one or two gems in a whole book, but that's okay. But I think it's just broadening the perspective. What you've certainly done today, Shea, which has been invaluable, is you give people an insight. You are, in effect, that audio mentor where you're saying, well, this is what I did. This is my perspective. This is my journey. This is how I navigated it, so that people can reflect on that. We find too many people that are not getting perspective from anywhere, and they're internalizing a lot of fear and anxiety. They may have people that they have to take care of, dependents, children, and there's just too much pressure bubbling up. So wherever that perspective comes from, you've given a lot of suggestions today, mentorship, as you say, listen, reflect, not everything fits, but something will fit. And the most important thing is take some form of action. I think that's the big sort of rallying call, like do something to either reduce those fears, to drive your level of confidence, to connect with somebody, to have a coffee, have a conversation, because the harsh reality is everybody has to transition out of elite sport at some point. You can't ignore it. It's a certainty. Might be 17 years down the track in your case, or a little bit shorter in others, but take some form of action. So, no, I think that perspective point you've really anchored in, Shea, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. So thanks again. Really appreciate your time.
no problem. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us this week on our ATA podcast. If you found this conversation insightful and it resonates with your journey, please subscribe, follow the show, and stay connected with us for more insight, resources, and information on how we at ATA are supporting your preparation for life beyond the game.